Hi everyone, this is Mindy Egan and welcome back to another Hero Arts video. Today we are introducing the May 2021 My Monthly Hero Kit. This month's kit is diving deep underwater and we have this beautiful 6x8 stamp set including a large coral reef image, lots of great underwater fish, sentiments. It also has 12 coordinating frame cuts, an intensified black ink cube, contour ink cube. We also have turquoise sparkle embossing powder. And in the kit, you'll also get two 5.5 by 8.5 rose quartz cardstock, two 5.5 by 8.5 quartz pearlescent cardstock, and you'll receive three 5.5 by 8.5 white cardstock with lined texture. This kit values at $70 but only costs $34.99. Here's a closer look at the stamp set that you would be receiving in the kit. I apologize, mine is a little dirty because I've been playing with it a lot, but you can see that really large image that's great for A2 size cards, 5x7s, or Slimline cards. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the cardstock on hand to show you on camera, but I do have the turquoise sparkle embossing powder. So you want to make sure you shake that up. And I'm going to give you a closer look at this. I'm going to sprinkle it on some paper here and give you a closer look at this beautiful sparkle embossing powder. And I am going to put this sparkle embossing powder to work today on my card. The first thing that I'm going to do is create a quick background. I am using a piece of dovewhite cardstock that is cut to 4.25 by 5.5, and I have Pool Party Reactive ink here, and I'm going to ink blend this color on using a blending brush. I'm going to just do this in kind of one corner of my cardstock, just doing some circular motions, blending that on, and I'm going to have it fade off into the white of the cardstock. I don't want the whole thing. I just want a little bit of background color there for it. And it doesn't have to be a smooth blend of any means. We are going to be doing some heat embossing on top of this. So I just wanted to kind of have a foundation of color for my seawater background. Now this next piece that I'm ink blending, I'm going to be using Pool Party, Blue Raspberry, and Blue Hawaii Reactive ink. So I'm going to have it going from lightest to darkest. This piece I'm going to be using to stamp my image on. I'm going to use that large coral reef image. So I started out just doing about a third of the cardstock with that Pool Party, coming in with the Blue Raspberry. Again, the transition does not have to be perfect. The blends don't have to be perfect. And to do this, I am using just a mini foam ink blending tool. I like to use that when I need to cover an entire background. They give me a little bit better coverage. I like using the blending brushes when I just want a really soft transition. Then next, I'm going to take this piece and put it into my Misty stamping tool. Line it up onto the card front. It fits just perfect on this 4.25 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock. And I'm going to ink up my image really well with the black intensified ink and stamp that down onto the cardstock. Once I'm happy with my stamping results, I'm going to take the coordinating die, line it up over the image and hold it in place with low tack tape, and then run this through my die cut machine. Now back to finishing my background. This was kind of an experimentation. I have a little ink cube here of some clear embossing ink, and I have my background where I just did that really light ink blending. So I am planning on putting my coral reef on the left hand side of the card. So I turned my cardstock and I'm dragging this ink cube across the cardstock towards where my coral reef is going to go. Then I'm just going to take that turquoise sparkle embossing powder and pour this over the top. I'm going to tap off any of that excess back onto my paper here, and I will put this back into my jar. I'm going to try and tilt my cardstock so you can see what it looks like on there. It's just adding a little bit of texture to my background. I was kind of really trying to play up that underwater look and adding just kind of stream marks, I guess, into my background. So once my heat tool is nice and hot, I'm going to go ahead and melt that embossing powder. And I decided I wanted to add a little bit more of this texture to the background. So once this panel has cooled down just a little bit, I'm taking that mini ink cube again and I'm going to drag that across my background again. This time I'm going all the way down to the bottom of the cardstock. I'm also going to bring in the sand embossing powder because that is absolutely gorgeous. It's a great combination with this turquoise sparkle embossing powder. So I'm going to take that sparkle embossing powder. I'm going to put just a little bit on. I know the bottom part of my card is going to be the bottom of the ocean, so I'm kind of saving that. So I'll sprinkle that embossing powder on, get rid of that excess, and then bring in my sand embossing powder. Now I noticed when I tapped this off, I must not have applied that embossing ink very well, but I'm going to go ahead and heat set this. Once this has cooled down, I'm going to bring that mini ink cube back in and just go over that area really, really well, just going right on top of where I heat embossed. Then I could come back in with that sand embossing powder and sprinkle some more over the top. Now, if you don't happen to have the sand embossing powder, that's okay. You don't have to add this to the bottom. You could do some ink blending with some light brown ink or just leave it as blue water in the background. So now that my background piece is done, I'm going to work on a sentiment really quick, and I'm going to use a sentiment off of the My Monthly Hero Kit. I line that up in my Misty tool, and I have a piece of pitch black cardstock that I'm prepping with my anti-static powder tool. I'm going to ink up the sentiment with the embossing ink and stamp that down onto the cardstock. And then I'm going to bring in white detail embossing powder, sprinkle that over my sentiment and tap off any of that excess. And once again, bring in my heat tool now that it's nice and hot and I can melt that embossing powder. To trim my sentiment down, you could either just eyeball it and use your paper trimmer, but I like to use the rectangle infinity die. So I picked a size that fit my sentiment. I'm holding that in place once again with some low tack tape, and I'll run that through the die cut machine. So now I have most of the components ready for my card. I am going to attach that large coral reef image with the Hero Arts Precision glue, mainly because I know my background is textured, so I wanted to make sure that this really stuck down. I also have a bunch of images here that I had stamped in a VersaFine ink and sprinkled with clear embossing powder, so that way I could do some embossed resist with the reactive inks, so they're very colorful. I went ahead and added foam squares to the back of those images, and I'm just removing the backing of that foam tape or the foam squares and adding them around my sea bottom here. Once I have all the images in place, I'm also going to take some foam squares and add them to the back of the sentiment and pop that up as well. Now I do have a little bit of the coral reef that overhangs on the edge of my card, so I'll just take my scissors and trim that off so all of my edges are nice and flush and fit inside an envelope nicely. So there's a look at one of the ways to use the My Monthly Hero Kit from May 2021. I'm going to bring up a closer look here so you can take a look at that beautiful turquoise sparkle embossing powder. There's so many ways that you can use this, and we can't wait to see what you do with it. So now that I've shown you one way to use the images from the kit, let's take a look at what the design team has put together. We are going to start with Michelle's card, who does beautiful clean and simple cards. She stamped her image in the contour ink and did some no line coloring. Debbie has a beautiful underwater scene where she used lots of elements from the kit and a little bit of ink blending right in the background there. Jessica's deep underwater scene has a fun school of fish, so she really took advantage of those little images in the kit. Dana's card has the image heat embossed in gold and I believe a watercolored image, and then some fun embellishments to have as little bubbles going up on her card. Shannon's card is using lapis cardstock and stamping the image in navy ink for a great tone-on-tone look. Lydia shares how you can use these images on Slimline cards and you can really create a big scene on the Slimline cards. Sika's card also has some watercoloring on it. In this image, she used her Karen Brush Marker Pros to make some beautiful colors. Daniel's fun design is creating this grid pattern across his card front using washi tape and the sand embossing powder. Elena used the contour ink from the kit and did some no line coloring with these beautiful vibrant colors. Maria's card has this little window which she ink blended reactive inks and sprayed with white iridescent spray from Hero Arts, and this fun sassy little sentiment from the kit. And Pam's card features this adorable seahorse from the kit stamped in a variety of colors across the card. We hope you enjoyed today's look at the May 2021 kit. For more inspiration, be sure to visit the Hero Arts blog, and to pick up your kit or subscribe, be sure to visit www.heroarts.com.